Hey guys, it's Drew. Thank you for checking out the Sober Fix podcast, where we talk about addiction and living life sober, one day at a time. If you like what you hear, go ahead and follow us. And if you get some time, check out our Instagram page at the Sober Fix podcast, and also our YouTube and TikTok at the Sober Fix. Hope you enjoy the episode. Hey, what is up, everyone? We are now season 2, episode 14. Things have been going good. I'm almost at 4.5 years sober. I can't even believe it. I look back at what it was like to be absolutely controlled by addiction, in the grasps of addiction, no hope, didn't know what to do. Finally ended up getting a recovery program. Finally got sober and learned from other people. That's what we do in recovery. We listen to other people. We learn from their experience. We team up together because we find that alone we may not be able to stay sober, but when we team up with other people and a higher power and everything that comes with recovery, we find we're able to stay sober. And I'm super excited today. I've got Mario B on. How you doing, Mario? Good to have you on, brother.
Hey, Drew. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. And just to get started, what's your sobriety date?
It is January 20th, 2024.
2024. Amazing, man. And congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So take us back to the beginning. What was life like before addiction? How did you kind of get started? How did that play out?
So I grew up in a normal, I guess normal family. Two loving parents, two sisters. I'm the middle child, and very supportive family. Kind and good values and morals were taught and kind of instilled in us at a young age. I was always the risk taker out of the 3 kids. So my dad likes to say that I would push the envelope and test the boundaries. um, and when it comes to alcohol, I was always, even at a young age, I can remember as far back as like 8 years old, and I'm 25 now. We at family parties, people would have beers, and nobody got crazy, but there'd be beer and wine around. It just looked interesting. It looked like there was something in for me with holding a beer, and life looked just better, and I just wanted a piece of it. I was always so intrigued by alcohol and like the forbidden fruit, it was just always kind of on my mind when it was around. I'd always, like other kids don't really care about it. They were just like, oh, that's cool. But I always kind of took a interest to it.
Yeah, and so what age do you think that you start drinking?
I started drinking. I had my first drink at 14. It was a Jack and Coke at a funeral procession. And I remember as soon as it hit my lips, I sucked it down with a straw, and my dad came over and swiped it from me, and that would be a back and forth battle with us until I got sober. He wasn't for underage drinking, and even when I was of age, I took it too far. So it was always kind of a tension spot between us.
Yeah, and so with your drinking, did it get bad quickly for you? Was there a period of time where you felt like, oh, this is working, I could kind of handle this? Or did it get bad right away?
It was a slow progression, honestly. And I was actually talking to my uncle about this today. I would say the turning point when it started to kind of, when the roller coaster started to take off was probably sophomore year of college. I had been in a relationship and we were fighting, and I was hitting the bottle to cope with the pain and anxiety of it all, and just the depression. I can remember having bottles of bourbon, in my dorm room, stashed in my drawers, and I would just when we broke up, I would just drink it and I'd pass out in my bed. I can remember not being able to go out to parties because I drank too much at the pre-games. It was, and then it just got crazy from there, Drew. Junior year, there would be bottles of, I would on a Tuesday, I would, if my girlfriend and I, we got back together and then we were fighting again. And during the fighting junior year, I would, polish off a half bottle of scotch and be passed out on the couch. Tuesday night, my roommates would put a blanket over me, and that would be my bed for the night. So it definitely, I was a liquor guy, and it definitely wasn't a good scene. But I wouldn't, as for like, did my parents know, or did anybody really realize what I was doing to myself? My friends kind of looked at it as, oh, that's just Mario. He's just a big partier, and because that's what you do in college, right? You drink. Or that's what society tells us to do. And my parents, I wouldn't tell them a lot of things that were going on. I would leave out details because, I mean, what parent wants to hear their kid drinking a half a bottle of scotch on a Tuesday night, right? That would raise some eyebrows.
Yeah, and that's so true. You bring up such an amazing point too. And I think this is why those that are kind of younger have a hard time getting sober at a young age, is because, like you said, in college, most people are excited to go to college because of that, the fun, the socializing, being able to go out and have a drink. And everyone's working hard and studying, and you want that kind of release. And I think that's a great point. And it probably did it make it harder for you to kind of say like, oh, this is a problem because of that, because you were so young, because society says it's okay to be drinking during college?
Yeah, I definitely, there would be bouts of time, even in college, where I would, go sober for 2 or 3 weeks. And I would say, I'm going to stop. I would tell my roommates, this is the time I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn my life around and cut out the alcohol. But at the end of the day, I didn't want to be the only guy in college, what it seemed like. I mean, sure, there was many of us, but the only one that didn't drink, and I couldn't let that go because it was my form of a social life. I was like, oh, what do we do on the weekends? We go and we get fucked up.
Yeah, and that was one thing that I loved about alcohol, and I did other stuff as well, but I could have no plans. I could have nothing going on in my life. Like, I don't need money to go to Disneyland. I don't even need to go to a concert. Like, me as an alcoholic, once I have that bottle, like, I don't need to be doing anything fun. Like, that was my idea of entertaining myself for a long time. And as I got sober, I had to start to find new ways to kind of have fun. I was going to ask you, at what point did you kind of realize, look, this needs to change. Like, this is more than just a guy who's in college drinking a lot. Was there a certain point where you started to kind of contemplate changes?
Yeah, yeah, I can remember the first time I was like, I'm gonna get sober. I need a break. And it was my buddies from home had come up to visit. It was sophomore year, and I was playing the role of bartender, and I bought a bottle of Jim Beam bourbon, and I wanted to make whiskey sours for us for the pregame. And I put 2 shots in each and ended up having 7 of them in the span of maybe 2 hours. And I was blacked out, and a lot of that was the first time I really blacked out and couldn't really control myself. And, I was very lucky to be surrounded by friends that night who weren't as drunk as me because I don't know if I would have made it home, puking, stumbling. Um, I was just just a mess. and I was very fortunate to have people there to take care of me because that could have been a very close call. And
Yeah, and
the
what did you do for help? Were you someone that went into drug treatment? Did you go to detox or treatment or anything like that?
so fast forward to December of 2023, I I was like, okay, so I can't really continue this is getting out of hand, my drinking, because it just increasingly went crazier and crazier at post college. And so I called and I made an appointment for January 20th of 2024 for a outpatient consultation at a rehab facility near my house. So I just had to wait a month to get there. I didn't go to AA before. January 20th was my first dive into any kind of help for addiction.
And what was that like going to that first outpatient class? How did that feel?
Oh, it was scary as hell, because that's when it becomes real. That's when you're like, okay, I'm here for a reason, and it must be because I have an issue, and um, I wanted the help, but I was scared, I just because I knew if I didn't have the alcohol to cope with all my issues and traumas and things that I had to face them. I had to face them head on, and that scared the shit out of me. And that I couldn't. It was a lot of emotions running through that day. I remember specifically the feeling when I asked the counselor. I was like, I don't. It was a Saturday, and I was like, I don't know how I'm not going to drink today. And she was like, just take it hour by hour, and just don't do it. Just like it was more like never drink again. That scared me. Correction. And she just said, don't drink today. And that's what really freaked me out because I was like, the whole don't never drinking again. That's a huge pill to swallow. And she just said, don't drink today. And that made me feel better, but it was kind of a lot of emotions.
Yeah, I love that you talk about breaking it down into a day. I remember thinking when I first got sober, and I'm at almost 4.5 years now, but I remember in the beginning.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, man. But I remember in the very beginning, after I went to treatment, I think it was like the seventh time, and it was when I knew there was really an issue, and I'm like, something has to give here. Like, I can't sustain life long term living like this. There has to be something that I do. But I remember being freaked out at the idea of not having alcohol to turn to, like having to cope with those relationship issues or breakups, like you talked about. Just not having it as an option, and that scared me. And I too would think about forever. How can I never drink again? And that's something I'm so glad you bring that up because that's something I try and tell people that are newer is, look, we're working on today. We can't be going back in the past. We can't be in fear of the future. We need to figure out how we're going to stay sober and cope with life today. So you're at the outpatient. Did they direct you into AA? How did you get introduced to the 12-step stuff?
My counselor, she recommended, she was like, you should check out AA too. That's a good pathway that people do as well as rehab. So I went to my first AA meeting that following Tuesday, and I almost left actually because I was like I was listening to people talk about, I lost my family and I lost my job, and for me, I didn't lose anything. Nothing detrimental happened yet, so I couldn't relate. But literally, as I was kind of getting up to leave, I heard somebody say, "If you have the desire to stop drinking, this is the place to be." And I was like, "Well, damn, that I have that. I can relate to that. So maybe I should just sit down and listen." And I haven't really looked back since.
Yeah, good for you, man. That's super cool to hear. That's another amazing point. I think a lot of people when they get introduced to some of the 12-step stuff, and I know it's not for everyone, but that's how
Mhm.
I started as well. And it seems like sometimes you can hear other people's story and maybe they've been to prison, maybe they've been to jail, maybe they have 5 DUIs, maybe they've overdosed, maybe they've lost houses, careers, family members, all of these things that another person who is still an alcoholic may not have experienced yet. I think that's an amazing point. Was it hard for you to say you were an alcoholic for the first time?
Yeah, yeah, it was. At first I started saying I have an alcohol issue, or I think I have an issue, and then that became I have an alcohol problem. And eventually at a meeting, I was like, fuck it. I'm an alcoholic. I'm here for a reason, and I kind of need to own up to it. And so I remember saying it at a meeting. It wasn't like a weight lifted off the shoulders moment, but it was something that I was like, I'm glad I did that because now I can move forward with my recovery.
Yeah, and so you got the 12-step stuff going, and I know we were talking about, counseling when this just started. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with counseling, how that's been for you?
Yeah, I love it. Group therapy is like it's my medicine. I love listening to people talk about their issues and their struggles, and then being able to help them in the rooms. So I'll give you an example. Um, there was this motorcycle rider in a room once, and I was talking to him, and he was like, "I don't know how to take care of myself. It's just not in my nature." I looked at him. I said, "Okay, I was like, you ride a bike, right? That's like your motorcycle is like your baby. You take care of it. You make sure tires are good, the engine's running, it's in tip top shape always." He was like, "Yeah, yeah, he's like, "Yeah, it's like my thing. I love her." And I was like, "Well, you have to treat yourself like that bike. You have to take care of yourself and make sure that you're always running and tip top shape and ready to go and hit the road." He's like, "Oh, I never thought about it like that." He's like, I'm so focused on other people and what they're doing. And I was like, "Well, you can't function. You can't help other people if you're not together yourself." And that was a really special moment for me because I connected with this random person and, I like helping people. I feel like it's like my purpose here. And so that was kind of a special moment in the rooms and in counseling.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. That's super cool, and I love how you talk about just being able to relate to other people? That's what
Mhm.
I found for so many years before I got sober. I knew I had a weird relationship with alcohol. I knew that I overdid it. I knew that I didn't have much control in it, but I had a lot of people that were trying to talk to me about my drinking, and they weren't alcoholics? So I got a
Mhm.
lot of the, "Come on, man, like, it's just willpower, like, why don't you just drink less?" Like, they were telling me a lot of stuff because they hadn't been through it themselves? And I think that's an amazing point that you talk about being able to relate to other people that have been through the same kind of things? Do you find that that is comforting within the, doesn't even have to be 12-step stuff, but just being able to connect and find support with other people that are in sobriety?
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel the closest to people that I can relate to that understand me and understand what I'm going through. There's a special, I my parents I'm very close with, my sisters, my friends, but there's a certain thing with people in the rooms that they understand that others who aren't addicts, alcoholics, they don't get. And being in those rooms, it provides us kind of a safety blanket and like a support network that is so key to recovery. Can't even stress it enough.
Was it hard for you to open up and share at first? Because I had a hard time in the very beginning. Was that something that came easy for you, or was that harder?
Yeah, it was. It. So I was telling my friends. I'm very open with my friends and family about, my close friends and family about it. It was hard to tell people who I wasn't as close with because there was a little fear of judgment and, what are they going to say? Are they going to look at me differently? Um, I came out sober on, I guess, to the world in July, and leading up to that day, I was nervous. I was nervous for people to be concerned and to be like, oh, I didn't know, and what's going on with Mario, and is he all right? And I didn't want that burden to be, especially on my family, of having to deal with that, all the phone calls and the texts. That I was more nervous about that. I wasn't nervous to say that I was an alcoholic though into the world because I looked at it as there are people just like me who are struggling right now who, if I come out and then tell people what I'm going through, maybe it'll help them.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. What was it like talking to your parents for the first time about what was really going on with you? And
So there was many arguments, conversations with doctors and family meetings about my drinking. It usually ended in me getting annoyed and angry and telling people to stop because they should worry about themselves. And I have it under control, which clearly didn't. Um, when I remember the day I went up to my dad's office, and because him and I have these talks in his office where we just shoot the shit. And I looked at him and I was about to cry, and I said, I need help. I said, we have to call like the rehab facility because I can't do this anymore. And he was like, okay. Been very supportive through all this.
that's cool, man. Yeah, it helps so much to have any support you can get, especially family support. How has it been now being sober? How are you? You feel like you're kind of getting used to it? Is it getting a little bit better? I know for me, the first month or two it was hard. I was super proud of myself and I knew I was doing the right thing, but it was difficult. Has there been any moments in your first 30 days or just early on where you were close to getting a drink or where it was just on your mind, you couldn't stop thinking about it? Have you had any of those moments?
Yeah, it's actually funny because, you know, when you get sober, yeah, I'm sure you've experienced this, everything that you were running from just kind of hits you like a truck, and it's like, okay, now I have to deal with all this. And my brain, sometimes, once in a while, it'll crave a drink. And, in the beginning it was more, but my brain would actually tell me, it's like, okay, I can't have a drink, but let me try other things that I wasn't big into drugs. I never even smoked pot. Um, but it was like, let me do everything that I've never done before. Let me try just to escape. And I'm not just talking about pot. It was hard drugs too. And, you know, I didn't do anything, but I had that craving, that need for a vice to escape. Luckily, I would, call my parents, call my sponsors, call my friends, tell my friends if we were out and I was upset that I needed to leave. But I always found that interesting that, my brain just agreed with me that alcohol was bad, but it was like, well, alcohol is bad, but, what about cocaine, or what about this? Why don't we try that? And I was like, it was insane. I was like, not doing any of that, but the idea of needing a vice that was a hard thing to get over.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And I hear a lot that oftentimes many alcoholics or addicts, when they relapse, a lot of times it's not even their drink or drug of choice. And that makes sense now as you're kind of talking about that, you know?
Hmm.
I was going to ask you about your sponsor. How has that relationship been? How much of a help has that been for your recovery nowadays?
My sponsor is amazing. He's actually my second sponsor. My first one wasn't really the right one for me, but my my second one, he's older. He's in his 70s, I think, and he I met him at my home group, and when he spoke, I really related to what he was saying. I was like, oh, that's like my story. And he I just quietly went up to him after the meeting. I was like, would you sponsor me? And we met, and we meet once a week, and he's just taking me through the steps, and he's very supportive, very patient, which I like a lot. And he doesn't push anything that, like, he gets me, like he doesn't, like, if he thinks that I'm kind of resisting something, he'll phrase it in a way to relate to me, which I like a lot. I need someone that I can relate to.
Yeah. And which step are you on now? How has that process been?
So just finished step 5, and we are going to be talking about step 6 in the upcoming week. Step 5 was interesting. That's a hard one. I talked to my two best friends about it, kind of all my inner demons. I mean, they knew a lot already, but confessing that stuff is it's definitely not easy. I commend anybody who's got to go through it and who's done it, because it's it's a hard thing to say. I was wrong. I made mistakes, and I'm sorry, and that and to be vulnerable with your about yourself, that's hard.
Yeah. I'd say that was it's up there as something that was extremely hard for me to do. It's like a lot of the stuff I was holding on to. But see, it was interesting because a lot of that stuff that I had on my fifth step, a lot of it was driving me to drink. And I hadn't
Hmm.
talked to too many people about it. It was hard for me to kind of go over all that with another person. I will say this, I felt more free after doing it. I felt just a little bit lighter inside. I felt like after I did that, I was walking around in the real world with a little bit less weight on my shoulders. Did you
Hmm.
find that you got a little bit of freedom from kind of letting some of that stuff out?
Absolutely. The roots to why I was drinking and running from myself, when I figured it out, that was very eye-opening, very freeing, and talk about it with somebody, and to let him know what really was going on. It wasn't just, I'm drinking because I don't care, or I'm drinking because it's fun. It was, no, I'm running from this pain, and this insecurity and this trauma from the past, and it explains, it explains why, for me, a lot of the stuff goes back to bullying as a kid. You know, there would be times I can remember in high school, and I wasn't like one of those kids that was like shoved in a locker or anything. I was actually well liked by a lot of people, but there was specific individuals that went after me verbally, and to say, make little comments and looks and just the little things, but they build up to big things. I can remember being in class, and there were some classes where if I didn't have any of my friends, I wouldn't speak. I would literally go mute. I wouldn't speak because I was afraid of getting made fun of, getting the wrong answer, getting looks, getting laughed at. I couldn't handle that, so I just wouldn't speak. And teachers were like shocked when they heard I was very talkative in other classes because it was like a different person.
Yeah, man, that's rough, and that kind of stuff goes on to affect us later on. And I love that you kind of it's interesting as you were talking earlier about just the relief that you got from alcohol.
Hmm.
Whenever you were just trying to forget about either whether it's, bullying from the past or those relationship issues. Like for me, I could just so relate when you were talking about that stuff because for a long time, alcohol for me really seemed like the solution. It seemed to help me. It seemed to help me cope, but eventually it turned on me, and all of a sudden the thing that I was using in my life to cope was now causing all of my issues and stuff. So, I was going to ask you, what's the most important thing you think right now? I know you're doing counseling, I know you're doing 12-step stuff. Is there anything else that you add to your recovery program? What do you find is just super helpful besides the counseling and AA? Is there anything else?
Yeah, I have a Instagram page called Stay Clean 365 that I do daily posts about mindfulness, addiction, recovery, mental health. Because I view it as okay, people are depending on me to post, and I'm helping them, even though I don't know them, I'm helping them. So I love that, and I'm actually working on a book right now about my life and my relationship with alcohol.
And how do people find how do they find you on Instagram and all that?
Um, like my Instagram handle.
Yeah. Is there a handle for all of that?
Yeah, so the addiction page is Stay Clean 365, and my book's not out yet. I'm still working on it, but it'll definitely be posted everywhere, and I'm hoping to reach as many people as possible because I found that especially from a man's perspective, there's not too many books about addiction and kind of mental health and like self care and especially at a young age.
Yeah. Did you have any books that kind of inspired you or that you've been reading in your recovery that have been helpful?
Yeah, actually, a big inspiration was Nikki Sixx's The Heroin Diaries. That was a huge inspiration uh, because it's raw and it's real, and you know he doesn't sugarcoat the bad, which I love. I don't like tiptoeing around like the scary stuff. Like for me, it's like now let's talk about it because it's real and it's the scary stuff that we need to talk about. We need to address things like suicide. We need to address things like addiction, and because talking about it is the first step to preventing it.
Yeah. And how's all the recovery stuff over where you live? Do you see a lot of people that are kind of battling addiction? Is there a lot of different meetings and support groups? What does that look like over there?
Yeah, Long Island has tons of meetings. There's an app called Meeting Guide. It actually shows you all the AA meetings near your area, and there's filters if you want like men or women only, young person. Um, so you can find the meeting for you. But there are tons. That's how I found my home group.
Yeah. And how important has that home group been for you? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. They have been by my side since day one. They took me in, and I'm the youngest, I think, member there. I whenever I get my coins, my monthly coins, they're there to cheer me on and very supportive, very very loving people who I truly believe want to see me succeed and keep sobriety. Um, I've never met a group of people that want to see you happy more than a group of addicts or alcoholics in recovery.
Yeah, it's almost hard to believe at first, or it was for me. As I walked in to the recovery rooms, it was like the only place I was welcome at that time. I mean, I
Mhm.
had been shunned away from family, friends, employers, you name it. And it was all because of things I did. Like, I take full responsibility for all that stuff now, but there wasn't too many places I was able to go. And it's so cool that an addict or alcoholic that is out there suffering, that maybe has no one to call, hasn't seen family in years, has been isolated, has been pushed away from everyone, can walk in and talk to people that they can relate to, and not be alone on the holidays and things like that. I was going to ask you, what are are there any amends, because you've done step 5 now, and for amends step 9, are there any that you are nervous to make? Have you thought ahead at all for any of those?
Yeah, I, I I would say I'm not nervous to apologize to and make amends with certain people. I For me, I'm always going to feel a little bit guilty about what I put people through. Especially my parents, all the worrying and the stress, my sisters, my close friends, my past girlfriends. Um, it That's gonna stay with me forever, and that's okay. But for me, it's more about just making the amends. That's more important. So to answer your question, I'm not too nervous about it.
That's cool, man. Tell me about your conception or your relationship with God. Do you have one? Did you have a relationship before recovery? What does that look like?
So my relationship with God is interesting. I'm not one of these people that um you know preaches religion to your face. I actually don't like that when people do that. I think religion should be a very individual thing, and your spiritual relationship with God or the universe, whatever you want to call it, is yours. There is no right or wrong. It's what makes you comfortable. Because if you're comfortable, then you can move forward and you could succeed. For me, you know, I I talk to a I like to call it the universe. So I talk to the universe a lot. I go on these meditation walks and I kind of speak out loud about what's bothering me and what I like about myself for the day, what I need to work on. It's like a self-therapeutic ritual. But it's interesting. As for like a higher power, I always think of like the universe as like a she, because for me, women have always meant so much to me in life. I have very strong women in my family, and I with sobriety, especially with my girlfriends, I've put the bottle definitely for the relationship. So I chose to address my higher power as a woman because from now on, I want to respect those relationships more than drinking and like vices, because those mean stuff.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And I love too that you've been able to find sobriety at a young age. You said you were 25, isn't that right?
Yes, 25. I got sober when I was 24, but now I'm 25.
Yeah. And have you been able to find support or friends that are your age that are sober, or are most of your friends your age just normal drinkers?
Yeah, most of my friends, they do drink. Um, they they weren't like me. They can stop. They can control it. My friends, the thing like with my friends and some of them have asked me like, "What's the difference between you and me?" And I say, "Well, you could stop. You don't need it. You like it, and that's great. And if you could drink and control it and be okay, then that's fine. Do it." For me, it's like you weren't using it to cope with suffering, or at least not that I know of. And that's the difference between a heavy drinker, I think, and an alcoholic. It's not about the alcohol for an alcoholic, it's about the vice and the escape.
Yeah, and that's one thing that was new to me when I started kind of diving into the big book. The paragraphs that talk about that hard drinker, and it's so interesting. It says, and I'm paraphrasing, but something to the effect of the hard drinker can drink in amounts maybe the same as an alcoholic. They may
Mhm.
even get some withdrawal symptoms because of the amounts and frequency that they drink. But if presented with a sufficient reason, whether it's a relationship they're really trying to save or maybe a health scare or something like that, they can stop or moderate. And us alcoholics, that's we don't have that stop button. When
Yeah.
did you realize you didn't have the stop button?
Hmm. It was, after a Yankee game, I realized something was an issue. It was after a Yankee game when we, uh, we've been drinking the whole day, and everybody else went home to take a break, and I went to the bar alone to keep drinking because I didn't want to go home, see my parents because I knew they wouldn't have let me out in my condition, and I didn't want the party to end. I wanted to keep going and going. I didn't care about, my health, what it was doing. It was just, let's keep going. And I was sitting at the bar and I was like, something's wrong. Everybody else is home and I'm here with a drink in my hand. Something's up.
Yeah, I used to notice I had this idea in my head that I would kind of tell myself, and it was always, oh, I'm going to go play pool and have two drinks. Like that was the thing that I told myself a lot of times. And the idea was good, but the problem was I don't think I ever went to play pool and only had two drinks.
Hmm.
Was there something kind of similar to that you told yourself, like kind of like an excuse at the time while you were drinking that maybe it's not so bad or it's not a big deal or you've got it under control? Did you tell yourself any stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah. I would absolutely say, oh, you know what? I would make excuses. I would say, oh, it's an open mic tonight, so I can have a drink or two, and I'd have three or four, and or I would say, it's Thursday, it's okay. Friday's tomorrow, or one of a very interesting thing was sophomore year, I got very sick. I got a flu, and they gave me antibiotics, and you couldn't drink on them. So I was like, you know what, like, I'll make a hot toddy. That's like healthy. It's got honey in it, and I'll do that. That's good for you. So a hot toddy with half a cup of bourbon isn't isn't the best mixed with antibiotics. I didn't get healthy very very quickly, but those are the kind of bullshit excuses you make at the time. It's like it's an insane disease.
It is. And a lot of times we don't even know how controlled by alcohol we are, or at least there was times where I didn't. It crept up on me.
Oh yeah.
I went from wanting to drink and then shifting into needing to drink. And the thing was, is I couldn't see the change. I look
Hmm.
back on it now and, hindsight's 2020, they say, like, I look back on it and I realize how much of a hold it kind of had on me. Do you look back on it too and kind of realize like, wow, man, that wasn't good?
I'm a poet too. I like to write poetry. I would when I was drunk or when I was hungover, I would literally write poems saying like I'm a slave to this. I'm never gonna stop. This is this is it. This is just my life. It's disturbing on so many levels because it's like you acknowledge that it has such a hold on you, yet you don't want to give it up, or you can't give it up.
Yeah, and what do you do today in recovery to keep your mental health in a good place? What are some things that you do to really make sure that you're okay?
So I work out, I exercise, try to either run or walk every day. And I like to do it in the morning. I think it's a good start to the day. Um, I'm in a band, so I work on my music and my singing and my guitar playing. I like to write and I like to talk and I like to hang out with people. I'm a very extroverted person, so I like to have deep conversations with people and I like to eat. I like food. Food's always good. So
That's cool, man. And what is your advice to anyone that is someone like yourself that is younger, maybe started to have issues like you did in college and is maybe had a couple blackouts like you talked about and is thinking, hey man, like maybe like I'm young, so I know like most people are drinking nowadays, but I'm starting to kind of get a little too many consequences from this drinking. Like, what would your advice be to someone kind of younger and contemplating sobriety?
I would say I would say ask yourself, does something really bad need to happen before I make a change?
Yeah, that's great. What's next for you in recovery?
Uh, getting this book published, uh, that uh, that is definitely the goal of 2025 to get that out there and to build up my sober presence on Instagram and if there's any uh nonprofits, I want to get involved in those and just spread the idea that recovery is possible um, at whatever age. That you're never too young to help yourself. I think that's the message.
Yeah, man. And what has that been like? Because I see your posts about recovery and spreading hope and stuff. How has that been for you? Have there been people that have like messaged you back? Have you met people through doing that?
Yeah, yeah. Um, there have been friends, acquaintances that I have met over the years who have reached out to me, and some of them have had issues of their own, and they've said that I've helped them realize that there is another way. Just because you're young doesn't mean you have to fill yourself with substances. I've also met people. I did an addiction walk last weekend, and I met some amazing people. It was called Shatterproof, and I was able to raise $1,700 for the addiction walk, so that was great. So yeah, I've been meeting a lot of great, kind-hearted people, and I can't wait to meet more and you know just continue this journey.
Yeah, man. And I find if you want to get social in sobriety, there's a lot of avenues. There's a ton of stuff going on, especially younger people in recovery. Do you find that's how it is over in Long Island as well?
It's definitely more of a presence in the city. Long Island, it's taking a little bit to kind of get that in gear, but I have no problem leading that charge or being a part of it. Uh, you know, I will do what is necessary to help people. Yeah.
And do you do in-person stuff, or do you do any Zoom stuff as well?
I only do in person, really. I go to in person rehab, in person AA. Zoom, I haven't really done anything with that yet, but I'm open to it. Whatever, whatever options are out there, I'm always down to try it out.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mario, man. I appreciate you taking the time. I love what you do online. I love how you are someone that is reaching out to a bunch of other alcoholics, addicts, and is showing that, like, look, it doesn't matter about age. You can get sober and you can enjoy life sober. And I love that you talk about the counseling and just I'm always telling people, look, like, add whatever into your life that is going to be positive and is going to increase your odds of being able to live sober day to day. And it's different for
Absolutely.
everyone. Any final words that you would like to say to any other addicts, alcoholics before we close this up? But I appreciate you, man. Anything else you wanted to say?
I would just like to say that there's hope. There's hope, and there's a way for a better life. It doesn't have to end in destruction. There can be a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you so much for having me, Drew.
No worries. All right, you made it through another episode. Thanks again, and if you'd like to collaborate or come on the show, please email me at thesoberfixpodcast@gmail.com. Have a great day.